Welcome back from the break. You're still watching This Week, and I'm Samna Sambo. Now, the administration of President Bola Tinubu faces its first major hurdle over the removal of fuel subsidy, as the Nigeria Labour Congress has announced a strike for Wednesday, June 7, if the government and the National Oil Company, NNPC, does not reverse this subsidy removal. The president had in his inaugural speech made it clear when he said, quote, "Subsidy is gone." His statement had immediately sparked reactions in the market, with fuel marketers, including state-owned Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, adjusting pump price to as high as 537 naira per litre. Now, government insists it can no longer bear the hefty burden of subsidy and will prefer to invest the money in education, healthcare, and other critical infrastructure. Now, while the Progressives Governors Forum hails the decision of the president, the Nigeria Labour Congress has threatened a showdown with government over what it describes as, quote, fraudulent increase in the price of fuel across the 36 states of the Federation. Smarting from its National Executive Council meeting on Friday, NLC has directed all its state chapters to begin to mobilize for a nationwide withdrawal of services beginning from Wednesday. And of course, some other unions that are affiliated to the NYC, to the NLC, like the Nigeria Union of Journalists and all others, have started mobilizing their members to go on this strike. Well, to help us make sense of the issues, we've built a panel, and of course I have right now joining me a petroleum engineer, Dr. Abubakar Alkali, and we want to thank you so much, Dr. Alkali, for joining us to help us understand these issues. And also joining us in the studio here is Head of Information and Public Affairs, Nigeria Labour Congress, and we'll also thank you so much for joining us here. And then, of course, from our offsite studio is Co-National Publicity Secretary of the Coalition of United Political Parties, Mark Adebayo. Thank you so much for joining us. And Benson Upah is of the NLC. I forgot his name. We'll just start with you straight, Benson. Why is the NLC going on this strike, considering that there's a near consensus among Nigerians that subsidy cannot continue? And then, of course, the president saying that, look, if we continue with this subsidy, then government will be left with no monies to be able to undertake critical ventures, including what Nigerians expect of it.
Well, Sambo, I do not understand what you mean by consensus by Nigerians. Which Nigerians are you talking about?
Well, that's what the government says. And then, of course, some Nigerians have over time said that we need to do away with subsidy, actually.
I mean, can you mention any Nigeria? But in any case, let me speak to this issue straight away. From the perspective of the market logic, the template for this subsidy is shrouded in misery. It's not in the public domain. How did they arrive at that? Past templates had criminal content. And what do I mean by that? Demurrage was a permanent fixture. There were other inconsistencies that led to probe panels whose outcomes were never made public. 3, NNPC, as a limited liability company or whatever name now it assumes, cannot be an operator and a regulator at the same time. It is an anomaly. Why isn't the door opened to other competitors to be involved in this process? Coupled with this, by virtue of the 2023 Appropriation Act, subsidy is supposed to run through the month of June. Why did Mr. President, on his inauguration day, said subsidy is gone, sparking this panic? Who was he pleasing? IMF and World Bank? Or what impression did Mr. President intend to convey? That he's a tough guy, that he can ride roughshod over Nigerians and get away with it? But let's look at the issues. Item 6, fixing prices in a deregulated environment defeats the essence and logic, principles of a free market. Added to this, where do the refineries that are supposed to be are supposed to be fixed. Where do they come in all of this?
All right. Very interesting perspective you've brought here. Now,
but I also have another perspective.
Yeah,
I just came from the
course.
market. I have another perspective which is non-market. I just came by way of the logic of market, a fundamentalist.
Oh, okay, just hold on. We'll be hearing all of that. We still have some time here. And I'll bring in Dr. Alkali. Talk to us about these issues. I know that you wrote a piece where you questioned some of the things that have been undertaken by the NNPC, including the crude swap deal by the NNPC, which you said is still in line, and of course the issues of the budget till June, and then the subsidy removal now. But the NNPC has said that the subsidy was not funded since last year, and that the government is owing it some monies, that 6.3 trillion as at last year, and then 3.7 trillion as at this year. Talk to us about that.
Thank you very much, Editor Sambo. And yes, I did write that article. And before going into the article, I actually would want to say that the government actually, to some extent, deserves some commendation for showing the political will to, fix the problem. I think that is the first step. You should have the will to correct the wrong. Then, the rest can come in. So that said, actually, in that article, I emphasized, on the need to look at the crude oil, petrol swap arrangement. I think there is the need at this point, actually, to bring out this fuel subsidy issue. Everybody is talking about it for many, many years. Everybody is convinced beyond any doubt that there is so much corruption in it. But at the same time, there is also a lot of secrecy and confidentiality within it. So I think the time is now for the stakeholders, particularly the NNPCL, to bring out what is in this subsidy for a better understanding of the dynamics and how to fix the problem. Why did I say this? Actually, in 2016, there was a crude oil petrol, swap arrangement called the direct sales, direct purchase, agreement. That's DSDP, and that arrangement is still running. And in that arrangement, you have some form of subsidy. So technically, subsidy is still running. I, clearly go with the fact that the money aspect, the cash aspect, should be expunged, as the government has done. But how about the DSDP? Now, the question here is, you have the crude oil swap arrangement. Every day, 445,000 barrels of crude oil is used, for swap, to obtain the 65 million liters daily consumption. Every day, this volume is actually given to marketers, that's third parties, indigenous marketers, who are supposed to import equivalent, take this crude oil, abroad to any refinery and bring in equivalent volume of either PMS, that's petrol, or DPK, dual purpose kerosene, or gas oil.
AGO.
Or gas oil. Now, as it were, you have this crude oil being taken every day under the DSDP. That's 445,000 barrels. And at the same time, government spends money, 6.7 trillion we were told is required this year, which was actually cut to 3.35 under the medium-term expenditure framework, but January to June this year. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is there is actually a very critical need for the government to initiate a forensic audit of the DSDP. Because technically, subsidy is still running.
Okay. Yes, very interesting perspective. Forensic audit is what you're asking for. And I'll bring in Mark Adebayo here. From the perspective of politics, talk to us about what damage this early subsidy removal could actually do to the Bola Tinubu administration, and of course, if it's the right decision for Nigerians at the moment?
Well, thank you so much. I think it would do a lot of damage, even if it's in the short term, because we need to disaggregate all the elements of the issues that surround this subsidy, the whole of this subsidy issue. I agree with the last speaker that there's a lot of opaqueness in the management and running and reportage of this subsidy issue. My major concern is that, you see, what has happened is that many players and many pundits believe that subsidy has to go because of the corruption that surrounds it, humongous corruption that surrounds it. But what really happened on May 29 was a fatal communication gaffe by the president. Because you have said you are going to remove subsidy during your campaign. Yeah, maybe people are expecting that, but there was no need for him to have declared matter of fact that day that subsidy is gone. Because now the market now responded to that singular statement is what has brought us to buying fuel at 600, 700. Because all of us know that in the Appropriation Act, 2023 Appropriation Act, subsidy still runs till the end of June. So the question now is, why put the masses into this excruciating condition at this moment? Because the question still remains, in the Appropriation Act that has provided for subsidy up to June end, to the end of June. So what happened that we are now buying fuel at 600 naira, 700 naira? So that has to be interrogated. But I believe that subsidy needed to go, but the way and manner that it was made to go in that fiat manner is what we are dealing with now. It's the consequences that we are dealing with. One of the presidential candidates during the 2023 election, Adebayo of the SDP, interrogated these issues in a very comprehensive manner. In fact, to the extent that it may not be necessary to even remove subsidy if we are able to plug holes here and there, excesses here and there, especially in the area of the cost of governance. The government, the President Tinubu needs to look in that direction a lot, because there is too much ostentation surrounding public office holders. The salaries are humongous, the allowances are incredible. These are the things that we need to look to be able to sort of mop up liquidity, mop up funds from other areas other than subsidy. Subsidy has to go, but the way and manner, there has to be a kind of humanization of the processes. For instance, I would expect, since the last administration led subsidy up to June, I would have expected that the president will use the next 30 days in trying to bring in the palliatives and the ameliorating elements that will have cushioned the effect of the removal of subsidy by June ending. But I don't know why he was so much in a hurry to say what he said. I support the fact that subsidy has to go. But we have to be systematic about its disappearance. You can't just remove it like that. You need to bring in a lot of ameliorating, structures to be able to sort of mitigate the direct effect on the Nigerian masses. The woman who is in Lugbe, who is buying maize, who is roasting maize by the roadside, doesn't know anything about subsidy. But you just know that he woke up, she can no longer go to the market to buy what he used to buy at the same price that is buying, because transportation costs have skyrocketed. Oh,
okay, just before I bring in the NLC spokesperson here, let's talk about the proposed strike on Wednesday. Don't you think that will further cause more problems in the economy? What's your view about the proposed strike, and what do you think is the demand? Do you think that demands being made by the NLC can be met by the NMPC before Wednesday?
Well, that is the unfortunate, dimension in the whole of these things. Once we are already in, the people are already overburdened, they are overstressed. Once the strike begins now, which seems to be inevitable now, it will further overburden the people. It is where two elephants fight. It is the grass that suffers, and the grass in this case are the Nigerian masses, overwhelming Nigerian masses, over 130 million that is under poverty level. So that is the major issue. I would want a situation whereby the negotiations continue in a way to get the government to ensure, and the president has to expedite action on this now, to make sure that whatever palliatives you are bringing to ameliorate the immediate effect of this subsidy removal, you have to do it now. You cannot wait till tomorrow. I still believe there's a window of opportunity. labor is reasonable, you just have to make them, you just have to meet them, you have to meet them at the middle level.
They'll be having a meeting all this while, and I want Benson to give us update on that meeting. I mean, Benson, if there's been this meeting over and over, won't the government think that the NLC is trying to blackmail it because that meeting has not ended or it has not terminated, and yet the NLC says it's going on strike?
Sambo, I hope you've been listening to the contributions of your guests. Why would you make such a statement? They just told you that even before the so-called subsidy regime ran out, I mean, the president on his inauguration day said it's gone. Sparking panic. So who has broken the law? We should try to be honest here with ourselves.
Yeah, but the NMPC said it wasn't being funded.
Now listen carefully. One of the fundamental duties of any state, whether it is a welfare state or not, is to continually intervene on behalf of the vulnerable, the weak, generally on behalf of its citizenry. If without that, there will be no need to sign a social contract for all of us citizens to surrender our rights, our powers to an entity known as the state. So that duty is prime. It's a divine duty that the state owes its citizens. Even the most capitalist states, like the United States and the UK, over time, they came to cherish the value of this intervention. And that is why in those economies, you have unemployment benefit, housing benefits, 1,001 other benefits, which they guarantee their citizens. So when there is subsidy in a third world economy like Nigeria, why should anybody want to criminalize it?
Yeah, but if the subsidy
listen.
If there's corruption in the subsidy, shouldn't Nigerians have a conversation about it?
If there's corruption in the subsidy, punish the criminals, don't punish the citizens. Punish them. Don't they know them? Let me tell you something. There has been subsidy from time. You know, from the beginning, this country ran a mixed economy model, slanted towards the state. It was understood. But the moment, the economy was slanted towards the market, a few crooked, well-heeled individuals got together and decided to commit crimes against the citizens. And instead of the state apprehending them and jailing them or killing them, the state now turns around and says, oh, first of all, the state begins to insult our intellect. It's only the privileged ones who have been enjoying subsidy. You, the poor, you don't enjoy it. As if the poor don't go by motor, they don't travel by train, they don't go. So because of this, we are going to take this out now. And the government now went on May 29 and said no more subsidy. And in doing so, and I'm going to read from an article from Perogi, today's article.
Yeah,
Perogi is a very well-informed. It's a very well-informed writer. It's one of the best writers. It's one of the best columnists around. He said, at 550 naira per liter, the price of petrol is now officially lower in many states in the United States than it is in Nigeria. Nigerians are now paying nearly the equivalent of $4.70 per gallon of petrol using the official exchange rate. If we use the black market rate, it's much higher than that. Now, let me just relate this to the capacity of Nigerians. The minimum wage here is 30 naira.
30,000 naira.
30,000 naira. At the minimum wage in the US, the federal, which is the least, is 1.2 million naira. You understand? So when people go about saying this is so cheap, that petrol is cheaper than coke in Nigeria, did not even understand that.
Yeah, but is strike the best way for the NLC to actually tackle the issues? That's what Nigerians are saying. That if you go on strike on Wednesday, you will be increasing the burdens of the nation.
Sambo, I'm going to ask you a reasonable man's question. Can you afford it? Can you afford it?
I think you must have been asking our viewers, not me.
No, I'm asking you a reasonable question.
I'm just a journalist.
And in any case, let me just answer your question directly. The Nigerian Labour Congress is not interested in any strike or protest action. Let me tell you this. It takes a lot of toll. It takes a lot of toll. So we do not rush to protest or strikes as a first option. It's the last option. We have met with the government. We said, look, your announcement came prematurely. It has caused panic. At that meeting, I was part of that meeting. Let me tell you this.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yes, I was part of the meeting. At that meeting.
Just quickly, so that
and NNPC MD said, well, yes, that those figures are their figures, but that they did not officially leak this the document. We said, in that case, withdraw it, so that we can use this window to talk. And they refused to withdraw it. So, for Nigerians, punishment started from the very hour Mr. President, in an act of cruelty, I call it, on his own very first day in office.
Using the very harsh words.
It's not harsh.
Because there's been this debate, right?
No, let me say. Mr. President campaigned on the note of hope. And then on your very first day, right there at the Eagle Square, you don't even wait to reach the villa or wait for next week. You say, from today, this is your punishment. Did it occur to him why his predecessor played around until he got until he started?
Well, very interesting question. Let me bring Dr. Alkali in here. You must have heard everything that he's saying.
Yes.
The politics of subsidy has been on. including President Bola Tinubu himself campaigning against subsidy removal on the very first day of 2012, January 1st, 2012. But it looks like he's seeing a different thing now while he's in government. So talk to us about this politics of subsidy, and if indeed Nigeria can afford to continue. And do you think that the NLC's decision to go on this strike is the best decision?
Looking at the politics of subsidy, I think this has been going on for a very long time. And you see, what we're actually trying to do now is, do a balancing act, because clearly fuel subsidy is not sustainable. It cannot continue open-ended in Nigeria. At some point, it has to go. And I keep saying that, the money aspect, we cannot be doing crude oil swap and at the same time paying cash. Okay? So taking out that money aspect, which is a lot of people believe, and rightly so, is corruption, is right. Now, the balancing act that I'm talking about is, as I said, fuel subsidy is not sustainable. It has to go. However, I think you can understand from the NLC's point of view that what is required, okay, is, finding a middle ground of removing the subsidy in such a way that it, inflicts minimal damage to already struggling families.
So what could the president have done better? He campaigned, and almost all the presidential candidates said that they were going to remove subsidies. Some even said on the very first day in office. So how else could the president have done this?
That's what I was trying to say. That's what I was trying to say. That the president, did right by removing subsidy. However, okay, there is also the argument, the given argument that this subsidy should also take into consideration the current level of economic strangulation of the people. And I think Mr. President has responded to that, because yesterday he announced, or day before, he announced a kind of measure. Okay?
Yeah, he's talking about new minimum wage and other palliatives to be provided.
And other palliatives. But my concern, apart from the politics of it. Of course, we know the politics of fuel subsidy is embedded in huge corruption, because out of this DSDP alone, the nation loses as much as 5-7 trillion naira annually.
Through the crude transfer?
Yes, through crude transfer. Then put that up with the 6.7 trillion, annually. You have about 13-14 trillion naira going like that. Now, my concern actually is the economics.
So what's the solution? What do we profile as a solution now? Because there's a pending strike by the NLC, which is scheduled for Wednesday, which I said that, it has the capacity of, causing lots of further ripples in the economy. What should the government be doing now? You've heard the demands of the NLC. What do you advise the government to do?
Well, what I advise the government to do is to expedite action in implementing the minimum wage, okay? And then also create as much awareness as possible. People are not, adequately informed about this subsidy. Public sensitization on the corruption that is associated with subsidy. A lot of the figures there in the subsidy are phantom.
Well, that's what the NLC spokesman here is asking the state to take action to prosecute those who have been, milking the state.
Absolutely. And another thing, you see, apart from the palliatives, the government should expedite action in selling off the refineries. Absolutely. Because this is why we're here. Yes, privatizing the refineries.
All right.
Government, from records, from the trajectory in the last couple of decades, has proven beyond any iota of doubt the government cannot successfully manage refineries.
All right, and we'll be bringing Mark Adebayo back. Mark, talk to us about the Progressive Governors Forum now. You're a politician. You've had the Progressive Governors Forum giving backing to President Tinubu, and President Tinubu saying that, look, he's seeking the understanding of the state governments on this issue of removal. And here there's a threat by the NLC to go on strike. And then, of course, Mr. President has gone ahead to say that there will be a review of the minimum wage while asking state governments and, of course, the federal government to ensure that there is a provision of palliatives. What do you have to make about this, the politics of subsidy?
Well, you see, look, you cannot. That is expected from the APC. It's their government, they are the party in power. Definitely they will support, whether for good or for bad, they will have to stand by the president. They need to display their loyalty. But whether that, gets to the masses that are, being affected negatively by this sudden hike is a different thing entirely. For me, like I said, I believe that subsidy has to go because it's not even benefiting us as much as we would have loved it to benefit. Whether it has to go. It is the manner in which it was announced that I keep saying that really has caused this type of panic and the pains and the excruciating situation that we are passing through now. The most important thing now, I would want to appeal to Labour, probably to shelve the strike for Wednesday, probably push it to by another week or two, while still leaving the window of opportunity for further, discussions and conversation with the government. So I think so, and I believe that President Tinubu himself should know that it will not be good for his administration to open the door for his political enemies to exploit and begin to seriously attack his government, because this is not. There has to be a way to meet Labour in the middle. So to be able to resolve this issue, so that another strike. Health workers have been on strike. Only God knows how many people have died. Only God knows how many people have died because of that strike. The masses suffer always when there's a strike. So it should be the last option, the last resort. And I think they should give the government a little bit of window of opportunity to be able to meet their demands at some. They have to
all right. Thank you for that, because we don't have enough time. I'm bringing Benson back. Talk to us about some of the things you would have heard from our panelists here. Other panelists appealing to the NLC to give the government maybe one or two, so that it doesn't look like the NLC is blackmailing the government, since the government is still new. And then considering that some of the politicians have said that they were definitely going to remove first subsidy if they get into government, how can the NLC create a better situation for Nigerians?
First and foremost, let me say this. The fact that some presidential candidates said they were going to remove fuel subsidy does not make it right. That's the first thing. That's what I want you to understand. What a reasonable person should do would be to look at the quantum of this corruption in the importation of PMS into the country, starting with the volume. What is actually, our daily need? Is it exaggerated?
Which is the 60 million
60
liters.
That, how do they know? Then secondly, is that what they bring in? There are so many opaque things going on. Some guys are getting insanely rich at the expense of our collective poverty. And I am sure all the presidential candidates were smart enough and are still smart enough to know this truth. So you don't come and punish the poor because of a few individuals.
Well,
do
what
that.
do you have to say about the palliatives and the new minimum wage that the President Tinubu government is offering, is laying on the table?
Look, let me tell you. Let me tell you something. They said that they would take a loan of, is it $800 million?
$800 million, yes.
Which will now be given to 50 million Nigerians.
Very quickly, as we try to round up.
Yeah, it was calculated to be at 5,000 naira to each person, 50 million. And then when you look at 50 million, and then you look at the figures of MBS, that 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. That is, in every sense of the word, they are poor.
Well, let me just add very quickly. It was actually to 10 million Nigerians, but with ripple effect that could get to 40 million Nigerians, 50 million.
So what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the rest of the Nigerians? And as for the review of minimum wage, how many are workers? What about other Nigerians? So the thing is this. Serious countries, at the moment the US is subsidizing petroleum to the minimum of $10 billion. That is how many zillion naira is that? It is not crying wolf, because it puts its citizens first. Go to Germany, they're doing the same thing. Go to UK, they're doing the same thing. So why is it a crime?
So what can the president do? What can President Tinubu do to assuage the feelings of the NLC so that the NLC doesn't go on strike on Wednesday? Very quickly.
Look. The first thing the president is expected to do is that, I made a mistake by making this announcement aforehand. That statement stands removed until the end of June. We're going to use this window to hold a conversation, see what we can trade off and what we can trade in, and so on and so forth. That is one thing. During that period, we'll be able to exchange ideas. But if you ask me what should be the way forward, I also tell you
very quickly.
That, we the privileged Nigerians who do not want something good for the others, we should purge ourselves of this feeling. Well, if we die today, we're not taking 1 naira. Then 2, fix the domestic refineries. If government cannot manage them, government can lease them out to professionals to manage. 3rd, automate the system. A gentleman came with a proposal, took it to an NPC. A proposal that could, that could account for a drop of fuel. Like Aramco. They turned it down, wait. Then there's that, punish the crooks. Don't punish the citizens.
All right, very important suggestions here for the government, and we hope that President Tinubu and his cabinet members for now are listening. And I'll bring you, Dr. Alkali, as we try to round off this conversation. Very quickly, what other suggestions can you offer to the Nigerian government?
Yeah, well, I will still come back to what I said at the beginning, which is that there is need to get into the subsidy regime. Okay, since when it started, a forensic audit is really important, and from that forensic audit, I think there is the need to look at 2016 to 2023, during which about 26 trillion naira has been spent on subsidy, and at the same time, the government uses crude oil. NNPC uses crude oil, allocates crude oil to marketers. Go and bring, refine it abroad and bring equivalent volume. At the same time, NNPC is also saying we need 6.7 trillion. So we need to get to the bottom of that.
Okay, forensic audit. And your very last words on the show, Mark, just in 30 seconds, talk to us about what you've heard from other panelists here.
I just want the president to think about the welfare of the citizens whom he has pledged and vowed to protect their interests and their security. Secondly, I want to appeal to the NLC once again to find a way to still give the government some little bit of window of opportunity while they further their discussions. I believe the president must ensure that since it has been put into the Appropriation Act 2023 that subsidy will run to the end of June, it should make sure that happens. They will go back to the status quo while negotiating with Labour. And all this tension will just come down. It's very, very important.
We must thank you so much. Mark Adebayo is the co-spokesperson of the Coalition of United Political Parties, CUPP, and he has been joining us right here, including Dr. Abubakar Alkali, who is a petroleum engineer and university lecturer. We must thank you so much immensely for what you've joined us to talk about. And then, of course, we have Benson Upah, who is the Head of Information and Public Affairs, Nigeria Labour Congress, joining us here. Of course, we want to thank you for all that you have done. And then, of course, one important thing that is being raised here is was the subsidy in the U.S. and all of that. Well, the U.S., does it really subsidize fuel like we've been told here by the NLC man? It's left for us to actually find out. And we must thank you so much.
$10 billion at the moment.
Well, we will have to do more research about that because we know that the U.S. subsidizes more of agriculture and all of that rather than petrol. But you have said that and we'll do a lot of research.
Don't impeach my integrity. I don't peddle rumors.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll continue to look into that.
Let me tell you something.
We'll look into that.
I can even quote from a paper here.
Yeah.
It's even here. Let me tell you. Let me quote.
Unfortunately, I don't have enough time left, but you've already, sent some signals, and we'll take a look at that. Benson Upah is of the NLC, and we must thank you so much. Well, that's how it's been on this edition of This Week, and we must thank you immensely for staying with us. I'm Somna Sambo. See you next week.